Okay, so tonight we start the topic of group health insurance, right? And this is an important topic for your final. If you're going to lay out all the chapters, this is one that spills over in importance, okay? This is a more important chapter than last chapter, for example. Last chapter was on the functions of group insurance and how it works. That's good stuff. I mean, there's test questions from there. But health insurance is such an enormously complicated area, and it's so important that naturally this is one we really want to take a close look at, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to look at who writes it, okay? So we're talking about group health. This is chapter 11. And the first group that they mention are commercial insurers. Commercial insurers are a very small segment of the market, actually less than 5%. So here you'd be talking about Kemper or Cigna, you know, very CNA. They write health insurance, but very small segment. Very few people have insurance with them. And they usually are following a model that is similar to the HMOs and the PPOs. But they are for-profit. Okay, they are for-profit. Then we get to the Blue Cross and Blue Shield plans. And the Blue Cross and Blue Shield plans are not for profit. They're nonprofits.
Bless you. What
Blue Cross and Blue Shield plans in your book are called traditional plans. They're called traditional plans.
What percentage did they make up?
They would also be a small percentage these days.
Okay.
10%, something like that. Because now what's happened is the Blue Cross Blue Shield model has changed to the PPO, the managed care model. That's what we're going to get to. PPOs, HMOs, they have adopted that as their main plan. As opposed to here, when we list them here, we're more looking at what they used to be, what the traditional plan was. After the Blue Cross plans came the managed care group. And they were for-profit. And they said, you know what? We can make money doing this if it's done right. And they actually were correct. They did make money. The managed care health insurers try to provide health care in a cost-effective manner, okay? Cost-effective manner. So they did a couple of things. They came up with things like pre-qualifying before you get admitted to the hospital, right? Under the old plans, these plans, your doctor could say to you, you know what, I think, you know what, you don't look good. I'm going to admit you to the hospital, right? And just send you to the hospital. Just say, get in your car and drive to the hospital. I want them to admit you. I think you have pneumonia, right? But the managed care plan said was, that's all fine, but you have to call us first. You have to call us and tell us what you're going to do. So who calls? But theoretically, the patient's supposed to call. That isn't who calls. The doctor's office calls, right? The doctor's office calls and says, we just had Tom Callahan in here, we've examined him, we think he has pneumonia, we're going to admit him, right? The managed care company might push back. Why do you think that? You know? Well, did you try this? Did you give him a lot of antibiotics? I mean, why do you want to admit him in the hospital? You see what I'm saying? This is the way they manage the care. That's just one example, okay? So you have to get permission before you're going to get admitted. You have to get permission before you're going to have surgery, right? So I had a lady come to me once to say, our health insurer won't pay. I said, well, what did you have done? I had asked that because I don't understand why they wouldn't pay. So she had some kind of surgery where they take veins out of your legs. Anybody know?
Varicose veins?
Yeah, well, maybe. Maybe it was varicose veins. Anyway, they took some veins out of her. She didn't think they looked good.
Varicose veins.
Okay. So they said, you know what? We don't pay for plastic surgery. We're not paying. It was like a big fight, but guess what? They stood their ground. They said, we don't pay. You didn't call and ask us before you went in, and we're not paying. Okay? So that's the managed care is something that really has changed health insurance. Our last group are the self-insured plans. They're also not really a factor because they just copycat the managed care plans. They just write their own, the copycat. Yes?
Is that a kind of emergency situation?
No. Emergency situations are an exception. You're exactly right. You can go anywhere and have anything done as long as it's a valid emergency, okay? All right. So let's start with the traditional plan, which your book talks about too. The traditional indemnity plan. Okay? This plan was offered by Blue Cross and Blue Shield, with the general breakdown there being that Blue Cross is for hospitals and Blue Shield was for doctors. That was how they generally broke that down. So the traditional plan permitted the insured, the patient, to select any doctor they wanted. Select any doc. They paid a cash amount to the hospital or to the doctor above a deductible. Okay, so this plan, the plan paid above an annual deductible. Now, this traditional plan was when I was young, okay? Long before you guys were around, okay? So my parents used to, if we went to the doctor or something, they'd get a receipt, right? They did what everybody else did. Take the receipt, put it into a cookie jar or something, right? Save the receipts. Meanwhile, periodically they would check and see. Usually the annual deductible was $500. Usually. Didn't have to be. Was for us. So once you hit the $500 mark, right? Usually in doctor's visits, but could also be hospital visits. Once you hit that, everything was free after that. Okay? So everybody saved it. It was a tremendous win for Xerox in those days, because everybody was always Xeroxing their receipts and then sending them into this Blue Cross plan. I don't know who had the job of reading all those things, but had to be a terrible job. So anyway, that's how they paid. Now, usually this plan works with coinsurance. It includes coinsurance, but it works in a different way in the health insurance world. Okay, so you'd have a $500 deductible, right? Then once you hit $1,000 down to $5,000, right? They would pay 80% of the cost. patient, or the insured, if you will, co-insures 20% of this layer from 1,000 to 5,000. Okay? And then above 5,000 to 1,000,000, even higher, they would pay 100%. Okay? So here we're saying insurer pays 80% of the cost in that layer. These were the traditional health insurance plans, and this is how they worked. So if you had somebody who, let's take an example. You had somebody who was going in to have a baby and there were complications. Okay, so say the bill came to $20,000. Okay, so the insured pays $500 right off the cuff, right? Insured pays that. Then we said $20,000. Well, so you're going through this layer completely. You're going through the 1 to 5 layer completely, right? Okay, so here they're paying 80% of this layer. The insured is paying $1,000. 20% of $5,000 is $1,000. So in our $20,000 procedure here, the insured here pays $1,500. Okay. Paid by insured. Okay? So insurance was kind of like, it was a backstop. It wasn't something you ran to, because you got the $500 you're going to be absorbing, and then if you did have any medical procedures, you're co-insuring part. So, it wasn't the end all be all, but it's what there was. There was very little competition in health insurance in those days. In fact, Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, they're like franchises across the country. They had like 95% of the market, okay? They had an enormous share of the market. Anytime you have a situation like that, it's not good for the consumer, okay? So what happens? What happens is, in the 1980s, enter the managed care plans, okay? So here's what we have. We have our traditional plan here, and now we're going to talk about the managed care plans.